Well, I don't think we make enough of that. I don't think we dip in to see what people have done in their previous lives. So we're starting now. So welcome to our first Facebook Live from the Council of Europe. We hope to do this every Wednesday around the same time, 2 o'clock. And it's been quite an interesting week here in Strasbourg. The Parliamentary Assembly is in session, and we've seen everything from the debate about who should be awarded the latest Vaclav Havel Prize, to marking Breast Cancer Awareness Month with the Council of Europe being lit up in pink. We've seen a debate this morning on Azerbaijan. We've had visits from the Czech Foreign Minister and President. We've had President Poroshenko of Ukraine here this morning. It's been quite an eventful week. We also have a new President of the Parliamentary Assembly. And maybe we can start with a little introduction. Let's have a look at Stella Kyriakides, who is the new President of the Parliamentary Assembly.
I declare open the fourth part of the 2017 ordinary session of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. Today, I open this part session as acting President of the Assembly. We will now proceed to elect a new President after we've examined the credentials of new representatives and substitutes.
Thank you.
Sir Roger. Hello.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
The votes cast were as follows. Mrs. Stella Kyriakides, 132, is elected as the President of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe.
So that was a film about the new President of the Parliamentary Assembly, Stella Kyriakides, but actually the star of that short film is with me now, Sir Roger Gale, who is the acting and 29th President of the Parliamentary Assembly. He acted as President of the Parliamentary Assembly for that interregnum between Pedro Agramont, who announced his resignation on Friday, and the election of the new PACE President, Stella Kyriakides. So welcome, Sir Roger Gale.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be with us today, the first of our Facebook Lives. And I just wanted to ask you, how did you enjoy your presidency?
It's been a bittersweet experience. It's been a difficult circumstance because Mr. Agramont was suspended effectively from June. So I was the senior vice president and found myself being hauled into office to try and keep the ship afloat.
Because you were automatically named president.
Yes. Yeah. By the way, I mean, just so that nobody takes this very, very seriously, the qualification for being the senior vice president is you're the oldest, and nothing more than that.
But, well, I'm the most experienced in the Assembly.
But as it happens, it was a difficult time for the Assembly. We've had a bumpy ride for all sorts of reasons that we can probably discuss. But I regarded my job as to get from A to B and to see in a dignified and proper fashion the election of a new president to take over for the last 3 months of this presidency, and then there's a rotation, and the socialist candidate, who I understand is Michele Nicoletti, will probably take over in January. Right. And I'm absolutely delighted that Stella Kyriakides has been elected. She's a superb parliamentarian, she's tough, she's fair.
She's the third
honest
woman so far?
Yeah, absolutely, but I'm not sexist about this. I frankly don't mind whether she's a man or a woman, but in this case, she's up to the job, and I'm very, very pleased, and I think we've got to where we needed to be in reasonably good order. And the other thing I'd like to say, and I'll put this on the record, I did it in the chamber, but I'll do it again now. When you go into the President's office as the President, and only for 4 days, but I did, and you meet the team, from the General Secretary, from Wojciech Savici through Mark Neville and the team. They are superb. They are so professional, as are the press team, I have to say, and you really do feel you're in safe hands. I'm very picky about writing speeches, and I don't write speeches. I certainly don't have them written for me. I make them.
Mm-hmm.
And all I can say is, and this is, from me, it's intended as a huge compliment. I've never met a team of people who could put something in front of you and you could pick it up and read it unsighted and know that it's honest, safe and true. They're magic. They are so good.
Well, I'm sure they'll be very, very happy to hear that. And of course, you do have a way with words because you have a background in professional training, I believe, which helped you in such
when
things.
God was a boy, London has two drama academies. The one everybody's heard of, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, and then the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, which is the better of the two, but the one nobody's heard of. And that's the one that I went to. So yes, I mean, I'm lucky. I was trained.
But as Vice President of the Assembly, you've got a lot of different hats that you wear, don't you? You do a lot of different things. For example, I'm thinking of the Vaclav Havel Prize. We saw the award of that this week.
Yep.
And you chair the committee that decides who wins that.
Well, ordinarily, the Vaclav Havel Prize committee is chaired by the President. But because the President had been suspended,
okay.
I took that over as the Senior Vice President before I fleetingly became the President.
Right.
And I have to say, for me, it was a huge honour. Going back into the mists of time, on the night of my 25th birthday, Russian tanks went into what was then Czechoslovakia, into Prague, and crushed the Prague Spring. And the following day, there was a massive demonstration in London, adjacent to the Russian embassy in London. There were 50,000 people there. Mm-hmm. And I took part in that demonstration, and for reasons I won't bore you with, but they thought I was one of them, the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament handed me the microphone and said, "Would you like to speak?" And I found myself talking to 50,000 people.
Fantastic.
Which was terrifying.
Unaccustomed as you were.
Completely terrifying. And I didn't know what to do. I said what I had to say, and then I thought, well, how do I stop? So I just started chanting, Dubček, Dubček. Alexander Dubček was the leader of the Prague Spring. And it's an incredible... as a chant, because it's got a hard K on the end, suddenly 50,000 people are going, Dubček, Dubček, Dubček. I was going to get out of hand. So I ran away and went into politics.
Well, you obviously realised you had a gift.
Well, then came the Velvet Revolution. And as luck would have it, I was back in Prague. And I bought from a young man who was trying to earn a living, a photographer, a black and white photograph of Vaclav Havel in Wenceslas Square.
Oh, fantastic.
In fact, I bought two photographs, one of Vaclav Havel and one of the Jan Palach Memorial. Jan Palach was the young student who set himself on fire and killed himself during the Prague Spring. Okay. Very moving indeed. So for me, given that background, to be allowed the honour of chairing once only, but a lifetime experience, the Vaclav Havel Prize, was just magical. I was just so moved by the whole thing. And the committee, who have been criticised because of the award that they made, first had a very difficult task to do. There were a lot of entrants this year, and I'm not allowed to say how many, but there were lots. And sifting them was difficult. They came down to three very, very worthy potential winners.
Before you give anything away, let's just have a quick look at the film. We have a film which we can just show about the prize itself. Let's have a look.
Every day in Europe and beyond, brave men and women fight to defend our human rights. Thanks to their courage and commitment, no one can take these rights away from us. The Vaclav Havel Prize pays tribute to them, highlighting their difficult work, honoring their achievements.
So maybe for people who are younger than us, they might actually know who Václav Havel was. Who was he?
Vaclav Havel started as a playwright, effectively. He was an intellectual. He was a bohemian, 60s. He had long hair. I think probably smoked a bit of dope, enjoyed jazz music. Lived a good life with a circle of friends who were all artistic, academic, philosophers, people who would go to coffee bars and to bars, to country retreats, and enjoy just talking and philosophizing. And with Charter 77, which was the charter that he set up to promote democracy in what was then Czechoslovakia, occupied, of course, effectively occupied by the Soviet Union, he set the ball for freedom rolling. And I've said I have two photographs of politicians on my office wall. One is Nelson Mandela. I was privileged to be an observer in the Mandela election, as it became known. Incredibly brave man. And then there was Vaclav Havel, who was in prison for a long time and never gave up. And not just Havel, I mean, to be fair, he had a circle of people around him who just carried this baton excuse me, with immense courage, conviction, determination. Politicians like me, we have an easy life. I've never been thrown into prison. I've never really been faced with the possibility of being thrown into prison for what I believe in, possibly for some other things, but certainly not for what I believe in. I don't think I'd have that courage. And that was why, for me, this man became a hero, an icon, persuaded me that we had to carry this torch forward. Was
he somebody who had a very clear idea of the importance of democracy?
Yes. Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, that was probably blazoned across his forehead. But a gentleman as well, and this is what I find so moving. On the wall of the Vaclav Havel Library, where the committee met for part of its discussions about the prize this year, there are a lot of quotations from Havel, and the one that hit me, because it's so simple, was that truth and love must triumph over lies and hate. And that was basically the philosophy. We're not going to give in. We're not going to roll over. We're not going to put our paws in the air. We're not going to say, we're for sale. We're not for sale, ever.
And we know what's important.
Yeah.
I think we've got another film which we'd just like to show. Let's have a look at that.
It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the 5th edition of the awards ceremony of the Vaclav Havel Human Rights Prize. The winner of the Vaclav Havel Human Rights Prize 2017 is Mr. Murat Arslan. Mr. Arslan is a former rapporteur of the Turkish Constitutional Court and is president of the now dissolved Association for the Union of Judges and Prosecutors. He has been an ardent supporter of the independence of the judiciary, and he cannot be present with us today because he is in detention, which is why that chair is empty.
So quite a brave decision there on the part of the committee to award the prize to somebody who's in prison.
It was the right decision. As I said, the judges were faced with a very difficult task. The judging panel is completely independent. Let me make that absolutely clear. It is not the creature of the Council of Europe. It is genuinely independent. The calibre of the intellect, I mean, frankly, leaves mine at the starting gate. There was a representative of Charter 77 there, one of the originals, one of the people who was, Martin, who was one of the people who were there, knew Vaclav Havel.
Ales Bialtsitsky.
Knew his wife, Olga, used to be a regular visitor at Radacek, the Dasher. Others, a very, very eminent lady, lawyer. Where she gets her stamina from, I don't know, but whatever she's on, I'd like some of it. I mean, she is so good. And that calibre. And we went through very fairly all of these. And the question you have to answer is, actually, which is quite difficult, although easier for Martin than for me, for example, but who would Vaclav Havel have chosen out of that list? And it was blindingly obvious that he would have chosen Mr. Arslan.
So tell us a little bit more about Murat Arslan. You said there in the film that he was a former rapporteur of the Turkish Constitutional Court from the Association for the Union of Judges and Prosecutors.
Yep.
What is it that qualifies him to be awarded the prize?
The qualification, which of course has been challenged by the Turkish authorities, who are not best pleased that he's been nominated, the qualification is that he stands for what he believes in, and that he is prepared to go to the wire with his life and his future. I mean, the fact that after that, and we didn't know this at the time, but there was actually an acceptance speech. He didn't know he'd won, but he knew he was in the frame, and on the basis, he got out of the prison through his lawyer an acceptance speech, which a lady lawyer then read on his behalf. And I found that incredibly moving. I think the people who are prepared to do that have to be recognised internationally, and we've been accused of this is the improper use of the Council of Europe and the Council of Europe's resources, and it's been manipulated and all this, and it's not true.
But what does he believe in? What is it that he's prepared to do?
He believes in democracy. As simple as that. He believes in democracy, he believes in freedom, he believes in truth, he believes in honesty. He believes that we have a duty to fight against oppression, and we do.
And he's been in prison since 2016.
He's been in prison on and off, and he's in prison at the moment. I think I stand to be corrected. I think he was in prison before 2016. He's certainly in prison at the moment, which is why that chair was empty.
Because of his support for independence.
And that was, I mean, we were. I don't think this is particularly a secret. The committee, and indeed others, not just the committee, but delegations, were put under pressure by the authorities to, this is not a, because the three names of the potential or the three finalists were published on the Council of Europe website some time ago.
Yeah.
Once we reached that decision, and it was only on Sunday night actually that the final decision was reached. And without breaching confidences, I know because I was there and I saw the votes when they'd been counted. Mr. Arslan was a front runner. And that was obvious. So
maybe I should just name the other
yes,
candidates.
please do, because they were both. I mean, they were superb, all of them.
The two shortlisted nominees: the Hungarian Helsinki Committee, which is an NGO which particularly focuses on access to justice and rights of asylum seekers and refugees, and Father Georg Sporschil, who is from Austria, and he's a Jesuit priest who's devoted his life to care of particularly children, but vulnerable people in society.
And we were honoured on Monday to meet representatives of both of them. We met Father George and we met the representative of the Hungarian committee. And again, it is hard because they were so. Father George is magical. He's a lovely man, and he's devoted his life to an incredibly worthwhile cause. But the person, and this was where we come back to Vaclav Havel, the person that, once we'd made the decision, Martin's, the Charter 77ist, said, I'm so pleased, that is who Vaclav would have chosen. Why? Because he was fighting for the things that he believed in passionately and that are so important to the Council of Europe. I mean, that's what if we're about anything, we're about democracy, we're about freedom, we're about the right to say what you think. You don't have to agree with me. My Turkish friends, and I have Turkish friends, don't have to agree with me. But I have a right to say what I think, as they do. And we have to defend that right.
And is it important, therefore, that the Parliamentary Assembly awards this prize every year?
Yes. Oh, yes. It's in its 5th year, but it's growing. It's hard. I mean, it's disappointing, of course, when a recipient can't be there. I hope that it won't be too long before the Turkish authorities recognise the need to allow people like Mr. Aslan to say his mind and say his piece. I hope to be here in this building when he walks in through the front door and is allowed to address the Assembly as a free man. And I think that actually would be not only a feather in his cap, but a feather in Turkey's cap, because that then says, hey, we've grown up.
And actual fact, one of the people that was present for the award of this year's prize was the winner of the first Vaclav Havel Prize, who is called Ales Bialyatsky. Yes. And he's, I think, from Charter 17 that you mentioned, which is a Belarusian human rights organisation. He's an activist defending human rights. And he was present for that prize. So, but he was apparently in prison as well when that prize, the first Vaclav Havel Prize, was awarded. He was in prison. Yep. We've got a film of him talking about the death penalty in Belarus. Let's have a look at that.
4 года назад я сам находился в тюрьме, и находился как раз в этой тюрьме в Минске, в следственном изоляторе, где содержатся также приговоренные к смертной казни. И когда нас выводили на прогулку через подвал, это вход в подвал, то там была дверь направо, которая была практически всегда закрыта. И мне заключенные сказали, что там расстрельный коридор, там сидят приговоренные к смертной казни. Несколько месяцев просидел в тюрьме, никогда не видел эти двери открытой. Почему? Потому что приговоренных к смертной казни держат в подвальных камерах практически все время. 24 часа в сутки они находятся в помещениях, их не выводят на прогулки. Они спят практически на полу, нары расположены очень низко. И, находясь в этих 4 стенах, каждую минуту они ждут расстрела. Дело в том, что нас не предупреждают заранее о расстреле. И любой незапланированный вывод из камер осужденных к смертной казни для них всегда является очень сильным шоком, потому что они не знают, или ведут их на свидание к родственникам, или ведут на свидание с адвокатом, или же их ведут на расстрел. Еще нужно отметить, что не выдаются в Беларуси тела расстрелянных. Это является очень сильной психологической травмой для родственников. Они практически не имеют могилы, они не знают, где похоронены расстрелянные и приговоренные к смертной казни расстрелянные. Эта рана, разговаривая с родственниками, мы понимаем, что она остается практически на всю жизнь.
So on Tuesday, the Parliamentary Assembly was talking about the death penalty because it was the, I think it's the 15th year now that we've marked the European Day against the death penalty in favour of abolition. And the position of the Assembly was that this is still a fight that is ongoing to secure universal abolition. And of course, one of the countries, the country in Europe, which still implements the death penalty is Belarus. What do you think about that? What's your position on that?
I've come a long way on this. I used to believe in the use of capital punishment as a deterrent, rather as I still support the possession of nuclear weapons as a deterrent. You hope that you never have to use it. But it's very easy from the point of view of the streets of London, where you say, well, we've got to prevent the murder of policemen on duty, because at that time, when I was saying this, I was also saying, if you don't give the police protection, then you're going to have to arm them. Now, we don't have the death penalty in England, I'm pleased, but we do have armed police. But that's a far cry from, and we talk about the death penalty as though it's hang a man or shoot a man or stick a man in an electric chair. But of course there's a slow death penalty as well, which is not just execution, but this is death by torture, by imprisonment, by deprivation. So is that fight over? No, it's not. And it won't be, even if every country within the European Union, within the Council of Europe, within the world, even if every country says, on the statute book, we don't have a death penalty. As long as you've got death by slow degrees, by imprisonment, by torture, by deprivation, by the denial of the right to speak, to vote, to do whatever you need to do. As long as you've got that, you've still got the death penalty. It's just slower.
So you see it as very much a key building block in securing all the other rights.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's what this place is about. I think we have to pursue this as vigorously as we have the courage to. And we have to be prepared to stand up and be counted. And in some countries, that's much easier than others. I mean, we've been talking a bit about journalism. Well, in England, you can say pretty much in a newspaper what you like. Without too much fear of being locked up or tortured or anything.
You might get sued, but...
I've been a journalist. I've been able to do some pretty bold things. But I've never put my life on the line. I've never put my freedom on the line to say those things, because I've not lived in a country where that's necessary. But there are countries all over the Council of Europe area where that is not the case, where you step out of line. And yet people still do. Why? Because they've got the courage to do it, because they believe in it. And that, in a sense, I suppose, comes back to Vaclav Havel.
Well, you've brought me very eloquently to our next topic. We have another film. Let's have a look at that.
Thank you, sir. And immediately I give the floor to Madame Brasser from the ALDE group. Madame.
There is a repression of civil society. Azerbaijan is on the 162nd place of the Press Freedom Index, on the 123rd rank on the Corruption Index. There is a lack of implementing the decisions of the Court of Human Rights. Concerning the allegations of corruption, and I don't want to repeat what colleague Schwabe said, we have to make it clear that corruption cannot be accepted, neither in one member state, neither here. So we have to blame, of course, the Azeris or those who tried to corrupt.
I immediately call Mr. Seydov from the EC group to take the floor.
This report is really very critical, and in some cases we are not agree with some statements. The general attitudes which we can see from this report is in a sense of dialogue. Azerbaijan is always in favor of dialogue and constructive communication with all institutions, including Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly. We never rejected objective, constructive criticism. But unfortunately, what can we do? Despite of all achievements which Azerbaijan has done during 16 years of our membership in this organization, we are under pressure, and again pressure.
So Azerbaijan was a big topic today, this morning, in fact, in the Assembly. What are your thoughts on Azerbaijan?
Mr. Seydov is a decent man. He's a friend. He's a member of our political group. We're all members of political groups. He's a member of the European Conservative Group. And I have some respect for him. I think he has a difficult job to do, because to some extent he has to defend the indefensible. And
in what way indefensible?
And Brasser referred to corruption. We have had two significant problems within the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. The first has been the presidency. We've bumbled our way through that, but we've come out, I think, on the sunny side. Have great confidence in Stella Kyriakides to carry that baton forward, and I think that problem is now behind us. And
in fact, the Assembly's even adopted a very dramatically revised code of conduct for its members, hasn't it?
Yes, it has, and that happened yesterday. But that was Ian Littlegranger, my parliamentary colleague. Ian Littlegranger, who's the leader of the European Conservative Group, put forward that report. But there is an investigation going on at the moment, and I'm not going to seek to prejudge that, save to say that the reason for the investigation is because there is an underlying concern that some members of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe have been in receipt of funds improperly from various places, and one of those places is Azerbaijan. Now, as I said, I'm not going to seek to prejudge that report. We have 3 eminent international judges who are taking evidence and who will report back. But what I will say is this: I am determined, my colleagues are determined, Stella is determined that we will root this out. There is no place for corruption in a place like this. If we can't be an example, then who can? So I don't care how high, how mighty, how important. I hope, please God I hope, that there is no member of the British delegation that has been in any way involved in this. But if there has, they go. We don't want them here, thank you.
Sir Roger Gale, it's a pleasure talking to you, and I'm so grateful that you've found the time to talk to us, and thank you for your thoughts and your comments, which have really been fascinating. It's a real insight into the work of this organisation and what goes on behind the doors and in the chamber during this session week. I hope that you'll join us again for our next Facebook Live next week. We'll be looking again at issues that are relevant to human rights, democracy and the rule of law. We'll be talking to some interesting people, and make sure you give us your questions. Thank you and goodbye.